Okay, our final learning objective gives us a couple of additional ways that we can use cost volume profit analysis to help managers make decisions in their business. So we'll look at margin of safety, operating leverage, and how we can use CVP if we have multiple products and we need to determine break-even points for more than one item. Okay, so as we move through, like I said, we'll take a look at each one of these individually and how we can use still margin of safety, operating leverage, and sales mix to estimate what our profit is going to be and analyze some what-if situations like we did before with our sensitivity analysis. All right, so margin of safety basically is the excess. That's what your text says here. The excess of expected sales over break-even sales. So basically, okay, in layman's terms, we'll flip to the bottom here, it's the cushion between profit and loss. So if we calculate margin of safety, if we expected to sell 100 tablets, but we only needed 54 to break even, then that means our expected sales can decrease by 46 tablets before we are losing money. Okay, so we can look at it in a per unit total, or we can look at it in dollars. Okay, so if 46 tablets are is our margin of safety in units, 46 hundredths times the sales price of our tablet, so 500 means that my sales could decrease 23,000 from my expected sales before we are generating losses. Okay, this is the difference between expected and break even. So my projected target profit versus break even. Then we can also do this with a ratio. So our ratio is the margin of safety in units, which we said was 46 units. Divide that by the estimated number of tablets that you think you're going to sell. And we're basically saying in this particular case with the 46% margin of ratio, margin of safety ratio, we're basically saying that we could basically lose 46% of our total expected sales before we would be generating profit. So once again, that's why the text calls it your cushion. Okay, so we can use cost volume profit analysis to analyze and to evaluate our margin of safety. Operating leverage is the second tool that we have, and the operating leverage basically is how we analyze our cost structure in our organization. Okay, and our cost structure revolves around, if you'll notice the book says, a proportion of fixed cost to variable cost. Okay, so our fixed costs are usually very expensive cost, and as we said, they do not change with volume, and so I need a significant amount of volume to cover the fixed costs, but once they're covered, everything else is profit. So when we're looking at our cost structure, we can use operating leverage, okay, to predict what impact these fixed costs are going to have if volume changes. Okay, and the way that we can do that is with something that your book calls the degree of operating leverage. All right, so there's an illustration in your text that provides a company that has horse-drawn carriages, and it's company A and company B in your text. But one of these companies, company A, is very highly leveraged with a lot of fixed cost. And company B, on the other hand, may not have as many carriages, may not have as many fixed costs. They have more variable cost. Right? So if you think about fixed cost, if I have more carriages, if I have more machines, if I have more space, then I have more money tied up in fixed cost, but I have the ability to generate more capacity and to generate more revenue and to generate more profit. The only problem is, okay, also along with that reward comes a risk. And so your book gives you an example of, this is a tourism city, maybe in New Orleans, and there's a hurricane coming in, and all of a sudden my anticipated sales drop. Okay, now I don't have the sales that I need to cover those fixed costs in company A, which was highly leveraged. Company B, who's basically doesn't have as many fixed costs, it's more variable cost. Well, when the sales go down, what they're omitting is the variable cost, not the fixed cost. Right, so we calculate this degree of operating leverage, which simply is contribution margin divided by operating income. All right, and so for company A, the degree of operating leverage is 2.5 times. For company B, it's 1.25 times. So what this tells us, okay, for company A, the change in my operating income will be 2.5 times the change in sales. Okay, remember, company A is very highly leveraged. And so if sales increase, okay, then their net income would generate. So it's would increase. So it's telling you that if my sales increase, my operating income would increase 2.5 times my sales. But the other part of that is if volume goes down, okay, then my operating income is going to go down by 2.5 times as well. Whereas in company B, if I have an increase, then I'm only going to increase my operating income 1.25 times. But if I have a loss, it only drops by 1.25. So it's okay to be highly leveraged and to have a lot of fixed cost, but there is some risk that comes along with that reward, and you have to be able to accommodate that if you're going to be highly leveraged. Okay, so finally we have sales mix. What happens if we sell more than one product and our sales price and variable costs are different, so we don't have the same contribution margin for each product in order to calculate break even? So your book gives you an example of a company that manufactures, let's see, cat beds and scratching post. Okay, this is Cool Cat Company. And they sell, like we said, cat beds, scratching post. But your book tells you that their sales mix is they typically sell 6,000 beds and 4,000 posts. So their sales mix basically is 60% cat beds, 40% scratching post. So we've got to come up with a sales mix ratio or a sales mix margin for the cat beds and scratching post. Your book has given you this, but I've added it to your slide. It's 60% to 40% or 6 to 10, 4 to 10. If we break those down, 3/5 of our sales are cat beds, 2/5 of our sales are scratching post. Okay, so our sales mix is a 3 to 2 ratio. For every 3 cat beds we sell 2 scratching posts. Okay, so I obviously would like to sell the product that has the highest contribution margin. Well, that is my scratching post. But I can only put enough scratching posts into the market that are wanted. Okay, and right now my sales mix is people are buying more cat beds than scratching posts, even though scratching posts is my more profitable product at this point. Okay, so we want to come up with and calculate break even in the sales mix. So I calculate the contribution margin per unit, which is $20 for cat beds and $70 for scratching post. Sales less variable cost. Once you have your contribution margin per unit, we're going to weight this contribution margin by multiplying it times your sales mix. Remember, we came up with a 3 to 2 ratio, so 20 times 3 and 70 times 2 gives us our start for our weighted average contribution margin. So our weighted average contribution margin is going to be $60 for cat beds, $140 for scratching posts, which gives me a total weighted average contribution margin of $200. We divide that by the number of units that we are looking at in our ratio, 3 to 2, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, which gives us the weighted average contribution margin of $40. So now I have the number that I need to calculate break even for this product. Fixed costs are $40,000. We're just trying to break even, so target profit is 0. My weighted average contribution margin per unit we just calculated to be $40. So I need to sell 1,000 items to break even. But 1,000 items of what? Cat post? Scratching beds? Okay, which one? Okay, I'm sorry. Cat bed, scratching post. So out of those 1,000 items, 3/5 of those, let's go back to our sales mix here, 3/5 of those are going to be my cat beds, 2/5 of those are going to be my scratching post. Okay, so out of their 1,000 items, 3/5 of those need to be cat bed, 600. 2/5 of those need to be scratching post, 400. So in order to break even in this particular market, I need 600 cat beds and 400 scratching posts. This is just a simple method to show us how we can calculate break even if we have multiple products that don't have the same sales and variable cost.